When it comes to the term Nephilim, to me it's really been surprising. In fact, I've only ever found it in one commentary. The fact that the spelling of the term, Nephilim, really does not conform to what you would do as a writer, how you would spell that term if you meant fallen ones. In Hebrew, you would spell it no-phalim, those who fall or those who are fallen. But we don't have that. We have Nephilim. You might also opt for Nephulim. That would be a passive spelling using the verb form nafal, the root nafal. But we don't have that either. So this idea that Nephilim means fallen ones really does not conform to the way that the word is actually spelled in the Hebrew Bible. And again, I've only ever seen one commentator take note of this, which surprises me. The term itself is best understood as either a noun that comes from Aramaic naphilah, because that would produce nephilim in Hebrew, or it might be an Aramaic verb nafal that would also produce nephilim. In both cases, you would have either fallen ones in the sense that there's something corrupt about them, there's something malformed, something in terms of a grotesque or odd appearance. And if it's the noun, naphilah, that noun in Aramaic means giant.
Since the original language doesn't mention the Cain line and the Seth line, how did that get started?
Well, it gets started because of the assumption that Genesis 6:1 through 4 is sort of building off Genesis 5, where you get genealogies, and other genealogies where you do have a line of Seth and a line of Cain in different biblical genealogies and in different passages. And so I hate to put it this way, but this is kind of the scholarly truth here. Hey, we don't really know what to do with the first 4 verses, so they're about like intermarriage, so that must be genealogy talk. So we take it back to that. Again, that becomes the justification, even though none of the wording is like the standard genealogies. No. You don't have any of that. You don't have the line of Cain specifically mentioned. And why is it that all the line of Cain are the bad guys? And why are they all women? I mean, you start asking questions like this, but to me, even that's peripheral. I think the real issue is, why didn't Peter and Jude take your view?
Good one.
Pastor. Why didn't they take your view?
Understanding the ancient Jewish understanding or concept of the Nephilim, Anakim, Rephaim, why is a supernatural understanding of that story necessary for Christians? How does that impact the concepts of sin and salvation?
That's an excellent question. On one level, we've talked about one element, and that is, look, if you want to be able to say Peter and Jude were correct, in other words, I don't have to correct them, okay, then you're going to go with what they say. So that's a fundamental issue for bibliology. But beyond that, we're trained as Christians to think one way about kind of our circumstances, and sin you brought up very directly relates to this, whereas an ancient person thought a little bit differently about it. Here's what I mean. If you walked up to the average Christian today and said, hey, why is the world the way it is? Why do we have human depravity? What happened? If the creation story, everybody was kind of had a relationship with God and it just went terribly wrong so fast. How did that happen? Well, the average Christian would say, oh, that's the fall. It's Genesis 3. Okay, a Second Temple Jew, again, living in Jesus' time, would not say that. A Second Temple Jew would say, well, there's basically 3 reasons. There's not just one, there's 3. One is the fall. The other, when we know that sin enters the world there, we have the first rebellion, humans rebel, the divine rebellion, that's where it all gets started. But then we have Genesis 6:1 through 4. And because of what happened there, remember Genesis 6:5, the wickedness of man was great on the earth. Well, there's a whole set of ideas, again, in the period of Jesus' day, that blames the watchers, blames the sons of God who violated God's boundary rule here between heaven and earth, and taught humanity all sorts of things that corrupted them. So a first century Jew would be thinking, that's part of why the world is as bad as it is, because of what happened there. because we had another divine rebellion, and it made us even more wicked. They manipulated us. And then the third is the Babel event. This is, going back to this concept of cosmic geography, when God punishes the nations by assigning them to the sons of God, and the other sons of God become corrupt. So a first century Jew would say, we're just messed up, not just for one reason, but for all three of these things. And what the church has done is the church has defaced, really eviscerated Genesis 6. So that is out of the picture. And you never really learn about Deuteronomy 32, 8, and 9 when it comes to Babel. You just learn the story. But the supernatural element to that is taken away too.
Right.
So the big answer is there's three events in the Old Testament that amount to divine acts of rebellion and human acts of rebellion, and the fallout, pardon the pun, of all three are why humanity is just in such a mess. And when the Messiah comes, here's why it's a big part of this that's really missed. They believe that when the Messiah would come, he would reverse all these things, not just Genesis 3. Okay, Jesus is, of course, the answer to the problem of death. Okay, Genesis 3, okay? Resurrection. But he's also the answer to the infection of humanity by evil, by these other divine rebellions. And there are things in the Gospels, in the book of Acts, in the epistles, that draw on this idea of messianic reversal of these other two things too, that we never get to in our theology. So if you want to have a fuller understanding of who you are, what the mess you're in is, and what Jesus was about, you need this other stuff.